Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Preferred Walk-Ons, a college football show about college football.
There you
I'm
go.
Jeremy
Proud of
Taché.
you for getting through it that time.
Hey, it only took 2 tries. That is Dimitri Zamaris, and we are back. This is actually our very first episode midweek after some football has been played. This is the first time that we're going to be doing some review and also some preview. If you guys have not yet checked them out, we did do previews of all of the Power 5 conferences and the American Athletic Conference. The SEC is not out there yet. But we're saving that for a later date just to show how wrong we were about the SEC.
Some of the takes have already aged so poorly.
Yeah, I honestly, and we haven't really discussed this very much, but I think that my main goal would be to release that in like week 8 and just throw it out there and just see how bad we were. But yeah, so now we're here. We have an opportunity to sort of go backwards to this past week and talk about some games that already happened. We will go through some news and notes. We will have some games going into this weekend, and at the end we'll sort of play a little game where we have some fun little gags where we get to talk about some of our favorite things from this past week and going forward. But Meech, we can just kind of jump right into this if we want to. I mean, however you want to get going, but
yeah, man. The way it's going to work is we have 6 big games that we're going to review and kind of dive in depth on, and then similarly we're going to have 6 previews
Right.
after the news segment where we'll take 6 games and review and preview those before Saturday's action, obviously.
Right.
So you want to just jump right in and start our first review here with Auburn versus Oregon, which arguably the biggest game of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I would biggest game is for sure. I don't know if
in terms of national impact and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So, I think the best place to start here is Oregon definitely lost this game more than Auburn won it to me. But how do you feel in terms of that?
I always hate – this is tough because we're going to have that same conversation around Boise and Florida State probably. It's like who won and who lost.
Right.
Oregon was in position to win that game. That's for sure. Oregon got off to the type of start where all of a sudden I was like, oh, wait, this team is a lot better than I thought they were. The way that they were able to use their speed to handle Auburn's front seven was really, really interesting to me. I mean, they were using – it was 30-7, and I forget their names specifically. But 30-7, it was like, Rainey and Demps out there back in the day for UF, where it was just like Herbert was just dipping it to them. And that was all that was happening. They weren't running up the middle. It was just wide receiver screen, running back screen, occasionally a run up the middle. And those two guys were really handling Auburn's front seven with ease. Herbert looked great. But in the second half, I don't know if it was sort of playing not to lose as opposed to playing to win.
But it was very Mario Cristobal has now had a couple of these performances where you can sort of begin to question, like, unquestionably the program that he's building at Oregon is great, right?
Yes.
They have a potential number 1 overall pick at quarterback. But outside of that, they've done a great job recruiting. They just brought in the number 1 recruit in the country. Their facilities
are played, by the way.
Yeah.
Which was weird. But
yeah, strange. Yeah. Their offensive line is all returning starters, right?
Studs.
So they have this consistency that they've built. Their facilities are second to none. But it becomes a question in these close, tight games, how much do you trust Mario Cristobal to be able to outcoach his opponent? Whereas Gus Malzahn is almost the exact opposite.
Right.
Where when it's a big game, he's ready to go, right? So and we can kind of focus in now on Auburn, right? Bo Nix started off really shaky, but I still looked at him.
Wait. Bo Nix started 6 of 20 for 92 yards and 2 picks. Let's not not just shaky. Bo Nix was horrific to start the game.
Right. So he started 6 of 20 and then finished up 7 of 11 with 2 touchdowns.
Yes, he did.
So when it became time to put up or shut up, I saw something that broken defensive touchdown that Oregon gave up by not having the guy. Yeah. Apparently that was all Bo Nix. Like the receiver didn't even realize that no one was covering him until Nix took the snap and just threw it his way.
Right. And
so
just like, oh, look at that
awareness. Yeah, that awareness as a true freshman was really, really impressive. And just being able to come up clutch like that in such a big matchup. Auburn should be feeling pretty good about themselves moving forward, honestly. Their defense was lights out in the second half as well.
Correct. It was such a college football game. And by that I mean to say both teams made a lot of mistakes, especially down the stretch. Yeah. Both teams were maybe mismanaging their clock, mismanaging turnovers, mismanaging when you should go for it and when you shouldn't. Like Auburn strangely decides a couple of things. Auburn decides not only are we going to, instead of kick a field goal at the end to win it when they were fully in position.
Oh, they went for it all, yeah.
They went for it all. Bo Nix just kind of throws it up to his receiver, who we're going to all give Bo Nix a ton of credit, as we should. Like you said.
That was a great play by the receiver, though.
It was all the receiver. Like, that was a kind of dumb throw. It was a fine throw, but he also underthrew his receiver. Like, that was just the receiver going and getting the ball and being more talented than the defensive back. But they decide to go for it, which is strange. And then they don't go for two. So they take a 6-point lead that if Oregon does complete said Hail Mary, Oregon wins.
Oh, we got to talk. I mean, real quick, and this can be the last point. Yeah. Justin Herbert throwing the Hail Mary like 11 yards out of the end zone was horrible.
Well, it was all because of penalties, because there was an unnecessary it was like what's it called? The unsportsmanlike conduct on Auburn for their ridiculous celebration, which, like, can we really just be done with that? Like,
yeah, seriously.
College athletics. Can we be done with that, please? Like, it's the UM rule, and I'm sick of it. But that was why they were actually in position where, like, they should have just run a bunch of crossing patterns and instead of it being a Hail Mary, Herbert should have just tried to rolled out and tried to find somebody who escaped away from elsewhere, because
the problem is towards the end of the game, they legitimately could not block Auburn. So
it was wild. It was wild. Yeah. But I going back to your original question on this, I actually think it was more that Auburn won.
Okay. No, I don't disagree. I think that
Oregon definitely did things to lose that game, right? Like, they definitely
– the 4th and 1 double timeout situation was not great either.
Well, and that I will say the refs did not handle that very well. The ESPN or ABC.
That was ABC, yeah.
The ABC camera crew actually did a really good job, and I'll give them credit there, being now the behind-the-scenes production nerd that I've become. They did a great job because they were focused on Cristobal. They were focused on Herbert. They were focused on the refs. They had multiple different camera angles going, and you could really see the entire – as Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler were having their conversation, you could see the whole conversation happening between Herbert and Cristobal and the refs. And I actually blame the refs for not being stronger on that, because I think what happened there, and for those of you that watched the game, to remind you of the moment that we're talking about, on 4th down, or on 3rd down rather, Justin Herbert was knocked out of the game, I believe because his helmet came off. Or no, because he got hurt.
It was a leg injury, yeah.
He had a leg injury. They had to come help him, so he had to come off the field. Oregon, then, because the play clock was running down with their backup quarterback, called a timeout. They believed that after they called the timeout, that they didn't really want to call, but after they called the timeout,
that Herbert would be allowed to
Justin Herbert back in. You saw Herbert and Cristobal walk up to the referees and ask the question, can he come back in? Clearly, there was not a strong enough answer from the ref, because the response from Oregon was, all right, Herbert's good to go. You know, maybe they said, hey, I'm coming back in, and he didn't say anything. Maybe that's not his place. I mean, I don't know the protocol of the referee. But to me, the referee's job should be to let the coach and the player know the rule and say, no, game plan.
And then they had to waste another timeout.
To waste a second timeout. Yeah. And that really was mismanagement. So between that, Auburn not going for two, it was just very much a college football game, and exactly what you want on national TV on the first night of the year.
All right, let's move on now to a bit of this game was another epitome of a college football game, right? Mm-hmm. Number 21, Iowa State at home, surprisingly against Northern Iowa, needs 3 overtimes to beat Northern Iowa. What's really weird, though, is if you look at the statistics of this game, it should not have been close. It shouldn't have been a close game in any way, shape, or form. For Iowa State, it was just self-inflicted wounds, right? And it almost came back to haunt them in the 3rd overtime when the running back fumbled the ball at the 1-yard line. And if not for Brock Purdy just jumping into the pile and grabbing the ball, they would have lost the game.
Which is insane to me.
So I want to talk about this in terms of Iowa State. Do you think this is more a sign of Iowa State, what they're going to be this season? Or do you think this is maybe them just kind of figuring themselves out?
I want to say that it's just them figuring themselves out.
Their defense played so well. They held them to 34 yards rushing.
Right. So that's why I want to say that it's figuring themselves out. This team's too talented to be that bad.
Right.
Right. Like there were so many mistakes, like just sloppy mistakes that you get frustrated with if you're a head coach. You get frustrated with if you're a fan of the team. But if you're looking at it from our outsider perspective, where there's not so much emotion wrapped into it, or we don't really care how Iowa State does this year.
Brock Purdy Hive does.
I mean, Brock Purdy's great, and I would like to see that kid have success. But like you and I, our lives are not going to be affected by how Iowa State does this year. So from a totally unemotional perspective,
right?
I don't want to like jump too strong one way or another. I don't want to say that this means nothing, because that would be untrue. You cannot play Northern Iowa and go to triple overtime and be like, oh, we're fine. It's all good. Nobody cares. At home.
In your season
week. Yeah. When you have all these expectations, when you're a preseason ranked team.
And people think that you're a legitimate challenger to Oklahoma and Texas in the Big 12.
Yeah, you can't do that and just say it means nothing. That said, I think it will change the mindset of these players. I think that if you're a competitor and you kind of get embarrassed and you feel so lucky to have escaped without it really ending because they lose that game, that's it. That's the end of the season. Like, I know that theoretically they could challenge this and that, but that changes everything. So you now escaped and it didn't really affect you. Like, maybe at the end of the year, somebody will say, like, oh, remember when this thing happened, and it might affect your ranking ever so slightly. But that's not really the point.
Right.
If these kids take it in the way that I think they will, if anything, it could theoretically help them going forward.
Right.
Because there will be more discipline. There will be more focus. And I just don't think that this team is as bad. I mean, I could be wrong, right? But that team is, I thought, or at least I think, they have a really solid quarterback, and they're very talented at a lot.
And really good on defense.
Right. They're talented at their skill positions, and their defense is obviously solid. I just kind of think it's a little blip on the radar where it'll just kind of like reset their season. And we could be talking 2, 3, 4 weeks from now, and they could have a couple of losses, and maybe I'd feel differently.
Right. So wrapping up real quickly.
Yeah.
It seemed to me it was obvious that they missed Hakeem Butler and David Montgomery. They're like just searching for playmakers now.
Yeah.
But I mean, and so that's going to be the problem. But luckily they have a bye week this week, and then they got they got a big game against Iowa, out of conference, in-state rival. So, I mean, once we get that, we'll know what we need to know with Iowa State. You know what I mean?
Right, and that game's probably college game day. It has.
I would hope so. I mean, it depends on what else is going on. But
the only games that weekend, just for what it's worth, it's Clemson at Syracuse and Stanford at UCF.
All right, so we'll see.
Yeah, they're not going to UCF.
Not again.
Not again.
All right, let's move on to another team from Florida, I guess. Then that's the best kind of transition I can make.
You're welcome.
So Florida State got off to just like a super hot start, right?
Yeah.
I was on Twitter like, man, they're
back.
They're back. Well,
they're back.
But 31-13 first half lead. You see everything, like you see all the makings of the Kendall Briles offensive makeover, right?
Yeah.
They're moving the ball quick enough where you don't notice that the offensive line is trash.
Horrific.
They're hitting the deep plays. And I want to say this. They lost the game, but they lost to a very good Boise State team. And I think that the overreaction – I think it's been an overreaction for Florida State fans this week. Personally.
Sure. You mind if I give some takes here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
That's what the show's for, my friend.
Boise State's very good.
Yep.
Bachmeier, stud.
Okay. Mahoney's a legit stud, too, at running back.
Oh, my God. Mahoney is a beast. Mahoney is a beast. I knew nothing.
But like Boise State has one of those running backs every
year. But that kid is really good. Okay.
Did you see the stat that Boise State has had 1,000-yard rusher every season for 11 straight seasons?
That's disturbing. It was, I did not know that, and that's insane. But Hank Bachmeier, first of all, just what a quarterback name. But
yep, a Boise State quarterback name at that.
Oh yeah, but those two kids, he and Mahoney, obviously really changed the way that game went. But I have to my frustration if I were a Florida State fan, and that I am not, but my frustration if I were a Florida State fan would come from the lack of adjustment offensively.
Right.
Not so much defensively. Those kids were eventually going to
get. Kids couldn't tackle. The defense was gassed, and so that's where you start to see the tackling problem.
Right, and that happens, right? That happens. It's college football, and Willie Taggart's out here blaming basically his strength and conditioning coach for not having them hydrated properly. Like, that's a joke.
Well, what's strange too is when you possess the ball for only 20 minutes, and the other team had 40 minutes of possession and had run over 100 plays by like the end of the third quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking, and this is really funny, is every time this happens, Boise State, they kept talking about how they practiced in their domed facility with the humidity, with like the sprinklers on, and then they shut off all the air.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think you can. Yeah, 600. You can't give up 600 yards at home to an offense led by a true freshman quarterback. And then James Blackman just got absolutely annihilated in the second half.
Well, and that's where I was going to go. And then we can wrap this up. But Blackman looked so good in the first half, and my goodness, that kid throws a pretty deep ball. But it seemed like Florida State looked at the film of Boise State and said, "Oh, they don't have the athletes to keep up with our athletes on the outside. We're just going to crush them with the deep ball all game." And so in the first half, if you watched, all of their points came from drives where they had a pass of like 40 or 50 yards. And not like a screen that then went 40 or 50. I'm talking.
Well, the first one was a screen, yeah.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying like all of their points came from long, big
chunk plays,
huge chunk plays, a lot of them coming off the deep ball. And Blackman looked great. But then as soon as you went into the locker room and you came out for the second half, you saw all of a sudden Boise was playing 3 deep most of the time, saying we'll allow, little 10 to 15-yard passes underneath it. That's going to be fine. If you're going to beat us by going 10 yards at a time, there's nothing we can do. But we're not going to let you beat us deep anymore. And as soon as that happened, Florida State's offense completely shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they couldn't do anything. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't throw the ball on screens. They couldn't hit slants. Blackman looked flustered. The offensive line fell apart, and they were going 3 and out. So it's the conversation that we have of, if you're going to have an up-tempo offense, your defense is always going to suffer. And if your up-tempo offense is going to go 3 and out the rest of the way for most of your possessions, you're going to struggle. That I blame on the coaching staff. The coaching staff did not adjust. So while
1 of 12 on third downs for Florida State's offense is going to murder your defense.
Losing a game to Boise State at home is one thing, because Boise State is a very good team that is capable of going into a lot of places and winning games, especially Florida State.
Inarguably one of the top 10 most consistent programs in the country, too.
Without a doubt. And they've been consistent, and they have a specific type of program, even though they had a freshman quarterback. Everybody else, they always have veterans on that team. I have no issue with losing to Boise State. It is the way in which Florida State lost that has people freaking out, and honestly, understandably, because you can't be up 31-13 and not adjust even a little, and the little icing on the cake of not being able to recover your own fumble and having fans in orange and blue doing the gator chomp in your stadium just to sort of mess with you is just, it's lovely.
Final thought, and then we can move on. This is just what I thought. I found it interesting. They announced during the game on ESPN that only one quarterback of a 4 or 5 star recruit signed with a group of 5 school last year, and it was Hank Bachmeier. So just kind of interesting.
I mean, it makes sense.
About quarterbacks and whatnot.
It makes sense.
Yeah. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this next game. Memphis versus Ole Miss. I put it on here because I thought Memphis should have won by a lot more, first of all.
Absolutely. Memphis completely manhandled Ole Miss at the beginning of that game, and it was still close. Defensively,
Memphis is a legitimately terrifying team.
Mm-hmm.
They held Ole Miss to a total of 173 total yards. So they nearly doubled them up on total yards. They I had forgotten completely that Rich Rodriguez is the offensive coordinator at Ole Miss now. Completely had forgotten.
I forgot to be honest.
But I'll say this. Memphis was actually super uninspiring, especially on offense, which is what you were expecting heading into the year. So kudos to you.
Well, no, but can we both have been right here a little bit? Because Memphis manhandled Ole Miss. Like, the score did not show how much better.
It was a one-sided matchup for sure.
It was not close. Like, I watched a lot of that game. My goodness, being able to flip. I missed college football tremendously. But
oh yeah, it was beautiful
being able to just flip just all these games. It was incredible. But Memphis manhandled Ole Miss. I mean, like you said, defensively, Memphis was all over like flying all over the field.
If you took off the jerseys, right?
Which one's the SEC team?
Which one would have been the SEC team? You would have thought it was Memphis.
Oh my God, Memphis is full of studs defensively. Like, and it was such an SEC style game in that it was all about the defense. But my concerns for Memphis that I did have at the beginning of the year, that I said they're going to beat Ole Miss, but I also said that I was concerned about them beating teams like Houston, and some other AAC teams. Well, if they lose to Houston, they're not ever going to get UCF. But teams like that my concern of them being like the preseason
favorite
in their side of the conference, or for that matter, in the conference in general, Mr. Brett McMurphy predicting them to a New Year's Six bowl. My concerns were valid. Their offensive line did not look great. They struggled to run the ball, even with Patrick Taylor. Brady White just looked fine.
Which is all he'll ever look like.
Which is all he'll ever really be unless the offensive line play is really good. And so while Memphis absolutely dominated that game and should feel really good coming out of it because they just pretty much manhandled an SEC school, which with a ton of athletes. One way or another, there's a ton of athletes out there.
For Ole Miss, for sure.
The concerns that I had about them I'm still concerned about them. This didn't really solve anything for me. It's exactly what we thought. Their defense is great. Their offensive line struggled, and they were just okay offensively. But they were good enough to win.
Right. The good news if you're Memphis is you follow up this game against Ole Miss, you play Southern, USA, South Alabama, who actually just gave Nebraska a tough time, trouble. But we'll talk about that later. Then you get Navy and ULM before you have to go to Temple. So
right, you got plenty of time to get things together.
Yeah, and we didn't touch on it when we talked about Florida State. I just want to throw this in since we're talking about Memphis.
Yeah.
Memphis, Boise State, UCF, and Cincinnati. Those feel like the four teams most likely to get the New Year's Six group of five.
For sure. So, and
Boise took a huge step forward with that win against FSU, but UCF has its chances. Memphis will have its chances, and
it's funny.
Cincinnati will too. So
it's funny. Boise State is going to go undefeated. I looked at their schedule after they beat FSU. Like, they don't play.
There's always a team in the Mountain West that comes close, so you never know.
Sure, and it's not.
Do they play Utah State this year?
Yeah, I think so. It's not impossible that they could lose a game, but like their schedule dictates that they should go undefeated.
Right, but so does UCF.
Yes and no. Like UCF at least plays Stanford and Pitt. They play multiple Power 5 teams. I understand, but it's still another team that if we're talking about the whole Power 5 thing, plus they play at Cincinnati and they play Houston. Like those Cincinnati and Houston are better than anybody else left on Boise State's schedule. Yep. So it'll be interesting to see sort of how that all plays itself.
It'll shake itself out, right?
Of course. All right, moving on.
Okay. This was the most Will Muschamp game I think I could imagine. And the most Jake Bentley preferred. So Jake Bentley, he gets a lot of, Jake Bentley, he's kind of interesting. He's not interesting. He's not a good quarterback by any.
He's not interesting.
He's not interesting.
Yeah.
Tavian Feaster in his first game with South Carolina after transferring to Clemson was okay. He had 34 yards on one carry and then 34 yards the rest of the game on 12 other carries.
Yeah.
South Carolina jumped out to a lead and then collapsed in the fourth quarter with Jake Bentley throwing two clutch. Jake Bentley was the most clutch player for North Carolina.
Before we destroy Jake Bentley also hold on. He also did suffer a Liz Frank injury.
Okay.
He did. Like let's just the Liz Frank. That's the Kevin Durant foot injury that kept him out for like a year. The Liz
Was this
Frank
at the
is
end of the game?
yeah. This was like apparently in the fourth quarter
Oh,
before the last interception. So I think it was like on one of the bad interceptions is when he got hit and he got hurt. Apparently he got hurt late, and it would explain why a lot of his throws late were sailing in the way that they were. They're
well,
trying
I'm
to
going to
figure
say
out right
this.
now if he's out
Still,
for like a couple months or if it's surgery that ends the season. That said,
he was still
he sucked
16
even
of
when he was
30.
healthy. Yeah, he
Yeah.
wasn't even good when they were playing well, and I don't want to use that as an excuse, but late in the game, it's relevant. It's important that we put
It's
that out
not
there.
great. It's not a great sign for your program when after the first game of the season, fans are already tweeting at other coaches about coming to South Carolina. I saw, and I'm not even bullshitting. I saw South Carolina fans. I don't even follow South Carolina fans, but I saw South Carolina fans tweeting at Mike Leach and Dino Babers already in week
Amazing.
one.
It's week one.
So, I mean, if that's a sign of things to come for South Carolina, they're in for a long season. But on the flip side, North Carolina, Mac Brown is going to Herm Edwards me for sure. I've come to just accept it, right?
Yeah, you said it. You said it in our ACC preview. You said that you felt that North Carolina wasn't going to be any good, that Mac Brown was past his prime, and that you knew you were saying that in that he was going to do the opposite.
And you know what? You know why I should have known better is because just like Arizona State last year, there's talent on this North Carolina roster. There was talent last year. They were just decimated by injuries, right?
And their coaching was not great.
Right. And now they have Sam Howell, who looks like a legitimate star in the making, right? After just one game, he looks great.
Stud.
Yeah, playing against an SEC defense. 15 to 24, 245 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions.
I can't believe a true freshman did that.
Right, and his 2 touchdowns, they were beautiful throws.
Oh, yeah.
Back corner of the end zone where only his receiver could get it. They have interesting guys. Williams, the running back, looked good. Daz Newsome, I've said multiple times, is one of my favorite players to watch.
Mm-hmm. If
Howell we're going to clean up with the fumble problems.
Yeah.
But if their defense can keep making clutch plays like it did, and if their offense can grow around this young quarterback, they might actually be a force in the ACC Coastal this year.
It's very weird that that's the case already, that we're saying that, but I don't disagree with you whatsoever, and they have a chance, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit. They have a chance to be a force starting this upcoming week. But the thing that I'll say about Sam Howell, and this matters, if we're going to give, it's 2 things. If we're going to give Hank Bachmeier the type of credit that he deserves for coming back and beating Florida State and like, oh my gosh, what a stud as a true freshman, Sam Howell deserves even more. Like Sam Howell.
The true freshman quarterback performances this week were incredible.
Well, in every game we just talked about. Well, we talked in the first 4, in 4 of the games that we've talked, or 3 of the games that we talked about Sam Howell, Hank Bachmeier, and Bo Nix, all true freshmen. Going out there and showing out, and really, Bo Nix actually looked the worst of any of them.
And he beat the best team.
He had the moment, and then beat the best team. But Sam Howell's other thing that I think matters, and I think that this is something that we should start analyzing specifically with very specific data. If you have a really nice beard as a white guy quarterback, I'm going back to Baker Mayfield, and I'm talking about the way the Mayfield looks with that beard. Sam Howell's got that same beard. It connects. My beard doesn't really connect here.
Right. I shaved mine this morning because it's always patchy.
Sam Howell, that's a connecting beard, and that kid's 18, 19 years old. He is going to be a stud because his beard connects. And you can go back and look at any of the quarterbacks.
Beard theory. That's a
connecting beards. It's not pretty face theory. It's just beard theory.
Beard theory by the Preferred Walk-Ons. All right, we're trademarking that.
Okay, perfect.
All right, let's I'm not sure Jalen Hurts has a beard, but he had a grown man performance for the ages in this Oklahoma Houston game. I want to say this before we give Jalen Hurts the credit he deserves. Mm-hmm. De'Aaron King, coming off a massive injury and major surgery, looked about as well as you could have against a Power 5 defense. He played tremendously well.
Yeah, it's a shame that they got down so much early, because after they got down, and this is the same thing that I would say, like, it's almost similar, not the same thing, but it's similar to like FAU played really, really well against Ohio State after the first quarter. And
when they had given up 4 touchdowns in 9 minutes, yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing with Houston and Oklahoma. And I think those 2 teams are probably closer than FAU is to Ohio State, obviously, in terms of,
yeah.
right. But that said, so like I don't want to discount how well De'Aaron King played, because De'Aaron King, they were still sending it, right? Like
I'm just saying, off the injury and everything that he's gone through, it was an inspiring performance.
And it was, and that's the thing that I was going to say from there, is that what he did do, while he wasn't perfect to start the game, and there were some jitters, and Oklahoma was flying around defensively.
That first series, those first couple series especially.
Right, but what Houston showed me was that they're like the level of, basically, with De'Aaron King, like they're basically a top-tier Big 12 team.
AAC team.
Well, no, top-tier Big 12.
Oh, wow, yeah.
No, because look at it. Are many Big 12 teams going to play Oklahoma much tougher than that? 49-31? Are there going to be a lot of
the two fourth quarter touchdowns made the score a little bit more misleading?
Sure, but my point would be, like, that showed me that I'm very afraid of Houston. Like,
yeah, I don't disagree at all.
Nothing about that game made me think that Houston is not good. It's only because there's a bunch of people that probably saw it the first few possessions and then turned off their TV and went, "Oh, yeah,
I'm not watching."
Sucks. But if you watch the rest of the game, Houston's solid. And then let me say this about Jalen Hurts. I so badly want that dude to win the Heisman Trophy. Like, what an awesome, awesome story it would be.
He's a great kid, man.
And he seems like such a remarkably great human being. Like, to handle things the way that he did at Alabama. And yes, we've talked about this before. I think the first guy that brought this up on a national front was Bomani Jones, who brought up that, like, okay, while we're talking about this and saying, like, oh, Jalen Hurts sticking things out. No, really, it was so he could graduate. And if Tua got hurt, he was going to play at Bama, and he could graduate and he could go play right away, which is fair. But between graduating, being the backup, being gracious to Tua in every way that we've seen, now going to Oklahoma, and he literally had the best performance since a Johnny Manziel performance. 300 yards, 3 touchdowns passing, 150 yards, 3 touchdowns rushing. He was perfect, and I would love to see him go out and win a national championship at Oklahoma, win a Heisman Trophy. Like,
he had as many touchdown passes as incomplete passes. So.
Right, he did.
Houston needs to think about their defense, but I'm not sure that playing Oklahoma is a fair measuring stick either.
They also they don't think about their defense. Like, you say that.
No, they don't need to.
They're going to
score like 60
people.
Points a game.
Right, they're just going to outscore. In their conference, they're going to outscore people.
Final thing on Oklahoma, and then we can move on to the quick hitters here.
Yeah.
Alex Grinch's defense looked great in the first, right, being able to hold Houston to 10 points in the first half, and then it was basically garbage time after that, was great.
It matters.
He's gonna end up being one of the key additions to any team, like, in the country. And I think getting him as their defensive coordinator and pairing him with Lincoln Riley, who is, and I'm just gonna say, Lincoln Riley is the most gifted athletic offensive mind on the planet. Like, better than Sean McVay, better than, like, he's a genius.
You sent me, they ran
the triple option QB counter.
Triple option QB counter. And if you guys can't, like, I think, you know what? Maybe we can go rip that video from wherever it was, and I'll just throw it over here. So if Meech, you want to go ahead and do that?
Yeah, I'll do that.
But they ran a play that was a triple option QB counter, which is basically envision your triple option, but then they have the fullback going and blocking, and Hurts, instead of running the triple option, countering, going the opposite direction through the hole. It was remarkable. Lincoln Riley is a genius, and he's going to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys next season.
Oh, for sure.
And, and Josh Heupel is going to be the head coach of Oklahoma next season.
Well,
here we
go.
Who
knows?
UCF. All right. Back to, that's our 5th or 6th reference.
There we go, buddy. All right, let's move on to quick hitters. So these are going to be 3 games that we each picked. Whoever picked the game is just going to go quick, like 45 seconds, what stuck out to them about the game, what they want to say, and then we'll move on. So I got my first 3 games. I'll go first.
Yeah,
I'm going to start with Oklahoma State and Oregon State.
Mm-hmm.
Spencer Sanders was about as good as you could be in his first start for the Cowboys. Let's see, 19 of 24 for passing for 203 yards, 3 touchdowns to go along with 13 rushes and 109 yards. And then Chuba Hubbard was a goddamn man on the mission with 221 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns. Chuba Hubbard, Spencer Sanders, and Tylan Wallace now is about as lethal a 3-man duo as there is a 3-headed offensive monster as there is in the country.
Yeah.
And sneakily, Oregon State looked really good. They're not going to be the doormat of the Pac-12 this year. Jonathan Smith is doing a great job. And Isaiah Hodgins is a beast out at wide receiver for Oregon State. So that's what I
wonder. Sorry,
yeah.
I know, and I'm not gonna. This is just to say, I always wonder how guys like that end up at schools like that. Like
Isaiah Hodgins.
Yeah, how does that guy end up at Oregon State?
They've had a couple though, Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, over a span of years. Sorry, it's always interesting to me. Go ahead.
But he was a beast, right? So secondly, I got Virginia versus Pitt. Primarily because it puts Virginia firmly in the seat for the ACC Coastal.
Yeah.
Now they probably have to worry about Miami and I guess North Carolina is the third team that you consider, right?
Like what?
But beating Pitt as badly as they did, Virginia Tech lost. Bryce Perkins was very efficient as he always is. They don't have Clemson or Syracuse on their regular season schedule. This is Virginia's part of the conference to lose at this point.
For sure.
And Pitt, I just don't even know if you're Pitt, like what you do from here, because they're going to lose to UCF by like 30 again. So.
And think about, if you're Virginia, think about what happens for you if North Carolina beats Miami this weekend.
Right. Then
you're totally in control. Totally in control.
But then you got to worry about North Carolina, right?
Sure.
All right. And then finally, I have FAU and Ohio State. And this is just to say Justin Fields, he is exactly who we thought he was.
Yep.
Like I said, he accounted for 4 touchdowns in 9 minutes of game action. And then it was basically cruise control from there. 18 of 25, 234 yards, 4 touchdowns through the air, 12 carries, 61 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. If not for Jalen Hurts, that was the most impressive first, transfer quarterback performance of the week.
Right. And think about the irony of that, of just who those guys are.
Right. And then finally, on the FAU front, they're not beating UCF this week. If I see that prediction one more time, I'm going to lose my goddamn mind. So. Which moves on to you with your first quick hitter, UCF versus FAMU. Why don't you go ahead?
All right, so UCF versus FAMU. So first of all, I don't understand why we're all of a sudden acting like FAU's in the same stratosphere as UCF, and maybe I'll eat my words, right? But just because Mackenzie Milton got hurt doesn't mean that Gabe Davis, Otis Anderson, Adrian Killins, Trey Nixon, Greg McCrae, those guys are there, okay? This offense was unbelievable in their first game against FAMU. And the reason I brought it up is just I want to talk about the quarterback battle and the quarterback controversy. Brandon Wimbush and Dylan Gabriel. Brandon Wimbush obviously did not look as good as Dylan Gabriel in game 1. That's not really debatable. He had his moments. Dylan Gabriel had more moments. Okay. Dylan Gabriel was the more accurate passer.
Snaps.
Yeah, on less snaps. Dylan Gabriel was the more accurate passer. Dylan Gabriel also, and I think this is just all of us fixated in our minds, knowing he's basically Mackenzie Milton's little brother, he also has the same stature. And seeing that guy stand back there in the way that he did with the comfort that he had, it was reminiscent for all of us of Mackenzie Milton, and I think it set us all back in this weird way. On Twitter, there has been this tremendous debate between what should UCF do with Brandon Wimbush and Dylan Gabriel. So many of the fans are revolting against Brandon Wimbush, and I would just like to slow the roll there. First of all, Brandon Wimbush
doesn't deserve to get attacked either.
Yeah, so let me start with that part of it. And I know this is supposed to be quick hitters, but it's just going to take 1 sec. Brandon Wimbush, in the way that he has handled everything in regards to transferring to UCF, has been nothing but class, skill, heart, all of the things that all the corny things that I can say about a transfer quarterback, he's been all of them. He's commended the program. He's commended the quarterback room. He's been a teacher. When Dylan Gabriel threw his first touchdown, the first guy to try to go celebrate with Dylan Gabriel was Brandon Wimbush. This guy has been nothing but class. And I think that it's important that when we do have these types of discussions, we're not railing on Brandon Wimbush, because I think UCF could go undefeated with Brandon Wimbush as their starting quarterback and Brandon Wimbush alone. Let me say that right again. UCF could go undefeated with Brandon Wimbush as their starting quarterback and Brandon Wimbush alone. Do I think that they will if it's just Brandon Wimbush? I don't know. Do I think that they will if it's Dylan Gabriel? I also don't know. The thing that I feel comfortable with is that Brandon Wimbush, the one thing that he has the ability to do that Dylan Gabriel does not, is that 3rd and short, when the offense is stalling throughout the game, Brandon Wimbush is basically a big bruising running back on his own. And so in some of those moments where the offense might be stalling, things aren't going great, he does have the ability to move things with his legs in a way that none of the quarterbacks on the UCF roster, not even Darryl Mack, have the ability to do. He's a very polished runner. That gives me confidence. I also know that while he will make mistakes simply because of inaccuracy, he's not often going to make mistakes because of reads. I don't think Dillon Gabriel will either, but he is a freshman. And if everyone's talking about looking ahead to the Stanford game, and they're talking about throwing Dillon Gabriel out there against a Stanford defense with at least one corner who's projected to be a first-round pick, a defense that absolutely annihilated Northwestern, I think we need to slow our roll a little bit and know that, yes, use Dillon Gabriel in that game. Like, I have no issue, honestly, and this is where I'm at, and this is the final point. 2-quarterback system, Brandon Wimbush, Dillon Gabriel for the first 4 games of the year, I actually have no problem with. I think a lot of people in the UCF circles are very apprehensive about a 2-quarterback system because they remember Blake Bortles and Jeff Godfrey back in the day and how that didn't really work. This is a different college football. This is a different offense. These are remarkable skill position players. Showing teams just sort of a different look is not a problem. You go the first 4 games with Wimbush and Gabriel. You basically have a bye week in UConn, and by that point, Darryl Mack will likely be back and healthy, if not sooner. And then you can either make the decision that it's Dillon Gabriel's team from there on out, or you can go with Wimbush with Mack as the backup and continue to redshirt Dillon Gabriel. And I just think we need to slow our roll on just anointing Dillon Gabriel the only quarterback that could win with UCF. We've gotten a little spoiled as a fan base, and I think everybody needs to calm the bleep down. Okay.
All right.
Let's
move on to your second quick hitter now. Well, Notre Dame versus Louisville.
The irony of Notre Dame and Louisville. Less about Notre Dame, although Ian Book did not blow me away. And I saw some really funny.
Blew that cheerleader's nose away.
Oh my God, was that not the funniest moment? If you guys haven't seen, go on Twitter, look up Ian Book cheerleader, and then find the girl because she's hilarious.
She's been hilarious. She's been a good sport.
So she's been such a good sport. Her first tweet was, "I see my broken nose is trending on Twitter." It's amazing. Ian Book did not look great, and it was very funny to see some Notre Dame folks, weird one, not most, but an occasional Notre Dame person that was like, "We miss Wimbush," and I was like, "Oh, if you only knew." But this is actually more about Louisville. Louisville's going to do more damage in the ACC than I thought that they were going to. Under Scott Satterfield, he immediately made a huge impact on that team. They were fun. They were running the ball unbelievably well. You can tell that within a year or two, once he gets his own athletes in there, that team's Louisville's going to be back. Louisville's going to turn it around very quickly. Shout out Tutu Atwell, former Miami Northwestern quarterback that was playing the slot for him. He looks like he is a literal 12-year-old on the field. He's 5'4", 130 pounds soaking wet, and he is fast as shit. Okay, last one. Wisconsin and USF. I literally, in my notes for this, only wrote "fuck off USF" because this says nothing to me about Wisconsin. This says everything to me about USF. We said it before.
Really?
Yeah, USF can't stop the run. Wisconsin can only run. What did we see in that game?
Jonathan Taylor tailback got his Heisman campaign off to a bang. That's what we saw.
And USF is just, they were horrific. We talk about Blake Barnett being meh.
In all 3 phases of the game, too.
They were bad in every single aspect of that football game. And look, sure, it says something about Wisconsin. USF, it's going to be funny because USF will improve throughout the year, you think, unless they just completely revolt against Charlie Strong. But I think mostly I'm frustrated with the way that Wisconsin performed, with the way USF performed. And I think that Wisconsin is probably feeling themselves a little bit after that because they rolled right through. And there's probably a lot of Power 5 people that are like, see, USF is UCF's rival and USF is a team in the AAC. No, man, USF sucks. And
yeah, they're bad. Legitimately terrible.
Blake Barnett was horrific. The skill position players.
USF might finish at the bottom of the AAC this year.
Yeah, and their defense.
If not for UConn, right?
The effort of that defense was it was pitiful, and I'm disappointed because honestly, I want USF to at least be competitive.
It's no fun when they're this
bad. They're
bad.
not good. When they're bad, it's no fun for anyone across the country. Period. And they're terrible, and I'm just disappointed. All right.
All right, let's move on to our news segment real quick. Just something to separate the previews and reviews, kind of get some, reflection in on some games maybe we couldn't talk about, maybe some overarching themes. So we'll start this week's news with the SEC failures. It just means more, Jeremy. They had themselves a week one. And I'm just going to go down the laundry list. And if you have something you want to say about any of them, let me know. Tennessee loses to Georgia State at home. Georgia State physically dominated Tennessee. This is a team that is 10 years old. It's only been in a Division I program for 10 years. They've never beat a Power 5 opponent. And they got paid almost $1 million to go to Tennessee and beat them at home. I was wrong about Tennessee, obviously. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, you were way wrong, dude. I hope you feel bad about it. That's all.
I feel horrible about it.
Yeah, that's all I have to say. I have no other words for that game other than I hope you feel bad about what you said about Tennessee.
Missouri loses on the road to Wyoming.
What?
Which Kelly Bryant played fine. They still lost. South Carolina lost to North Carolina. Will Muschamp's hot seat is already hot.
Yep.
Ole Miss loses to Memphis, which we talked about.
Right.
UF won, but they looked pretty bad against Miami. But that was, its own thing.
Yeah, this is where I want to jump in there really quick.
Yeah.
Even though they didn't look perfect, the fact that UF dropped 3 spots in the AP poll after beating a rival week 1,
yeah,
that is just outside the top 25. It is kind of dumb.
The polls don't matter at this point.
I know they don't matter. It's just
that's why I'm not even going to include the rankings on any of our graphics until
sure. But that's just my one little criticism that I do want to say there. They whatever. Anyway, sorry.
This is where it gets interesting though, and I want your opinion on some of these. Kentucky only led by 1 touchdown going into the fourth quarter against Toledo.
Toledo's a fine program. I watched Toledo play.
They're one of the better MAC teams, right?
Yeah, they're not a bad team.
Yeah,
but I mean, Kentucky showed what we talked about, which is that they are going to take a step back from what they were.
Right. Mississippi State only led by a touchdown, playing against the Raging Cajuns at home, and then they only ended up winning by 10.
That's just weird. I don't even know what to think about that game. That didn't show me anything from anybody. It was just
maybe weird. It's breaking in a new quarterback. So then this one is interesting, right? Arkansas only beat Portland State by 1 touchdown at home.
I mean, Arkansas is not that good. It's not that good. The bottom half. All this says to me is that the top of the SEC is as good as it's ever been. In that. Alabama, Georgia.
It's just not going to be as deep as it was last year, right?
So
and
that's what I was
going to. Depth last year was incredible, right?
Right. Well, that was the whole thing. That's what it's been about the SEC. The thing about the SEC has been that their bottom tier teams will go beat, the 3rd, 4th, 5th best team in the ACC, the Pac-12, whatever. The worst of those teams, Vanderbilt, all these teams that have been, at the very bottom of the SEC for years, will go in on the road and beat. Really good Pac-12 teams or Big Ten teams. That's just not going to be the case this year. Their top 5 is really good. And I would actually say their top 4 is really, really good. Their top 5 is I'm putting Florida 5th. I think Auburn's better than Florida. And so that's just Bo Nix showed.
No, I don't disagree.
Bo Nix I don't disagree. By Franks already, and that's all that matters to me. And so Bama, Georgia, LSU, Auburn, Florida, great teams. Those could theoretically be the 5 best teams in the country. But after that,
dumpster fire afterwards.
There's such a steep drop-off, and I think you could end up with 5 SEC coaches fired by the end of the year.
Yep.
It's crazy how much worse the bottom half of that conference is. And I think it's just because we're seeing the juxtaposition specifically to the top half of the conference.
It makes the delineation between the haves and have-nots very, very obvious.
Giant. Yeah, right? It's giant. It would be shocking now to me if those types of teams, normally we get concerned that the SEC is going to have some cannibalism. I don't think that's going to happen.
I mean, Kentucky and Mississippi State both won 9 and 10 games last year, and they both looked terrible.
Yeah.
And, it is still week 1, so you never know.
But yes and no, because we were able to pretty quickly at the top of our show create some pretty snap judgments about teams that I think are going to ring true. We know what, Auburn is going to be. We know what now North Carolina is probably going to be. We just talked about Louisville against Notre Dame. We can make some assumptions about them. I simply know that the drop off between the top 5 and the rest of this conference is significant, and I highly, highly doubt there will be more than 1 or 2 upsets all the way throughout the year in SEC play.
All right, and then let's move on now to our second news item. Pac-12 playoff hopes. With Oregon losing to Auburn, it might feel like that. So Oregon loses to Auburn. USC loses their starting quarterback for the year.
Mm-hmm.
If Stanford's offense looked bad and KJ Costello might miss this week against USC, so that could be a little cannibalization sort of factor
God,
here.
I hope not.
And even if they do beat USC this week, they have to travel across the country to play UCF the next week.
Right.
Washington and Utah, to me, seem like the only 2 teams that have a chance, and they would have to run the table.
Right.
And hope for some losses. And I still then it's still a question to me.
Utah's the weird trendy pick that everybody likes, and it's because they have the easier schedule. So all they're going to have to do is go beat whoever wins the Pac-12 North. So all they're going to have to do is go beat either Washington, Stanford, or Oregon.
Or Washington State now. Washington State I was out on, but they look pretty good.
Yeah. Any of those teams is what they're going to have to go do. And obviously they got to beat USC as well, but USC without JT Daniels, like, what is USC?
I think Washington is the most interesting case.
Because they've been consistent.
And this feels disrespectful to Utah because Utah looked great. Zach Moss is one of the best running backs in the country. Yeah. Their defense is just disgusting. Right. And there's not a head coach in the country that I would want to fight less than Kyle Whittingham, and I think that counts for something. But Washington, Jacob Eason looked great.
Yeah, man.
These Georgia quarterbacks that have transferred, Jacob Eason looks like a legitimate NFL prospect again.
Yeah.
And I love Chris Peterson. Chris Peterson's probably my favorite college football coach. So to me, Washington and Utah both still have a chance, but I could still see 2 SEC teams getting in before an undefeated Pac-12 team.
I feel the same way, and strictly because of the fact that Oregon's lost to Auburn, just crushed it all.
So listen to this. Auburn, and this will be if LSU beats Texas.
Sure.
And then their only loss this whole season is against Alabama. And Alabama runs the table. LSU would still make the playoffs over an undefeated Pac-12 champion if it was Washington or Utah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. All right. That's all. I just wanted to see where we were at. I mean, it's week 1, so that could change.
Of course.
Our opinion,
and Texas
especially if the SEC
keeps getting
its pants.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff, but I'm always of the belief that multiple SEC teams are going to get in. But that said, we just said that the SEC is not as tough as it was.
Right. That's why I think that answer could change with time. Right.
Yeah, it could. All right.
So
now it's time to preview
the
some
Saturday
of the games
six pack.
This week. All right. Oh my God, I love you.
Crack open a cold one, boys.
Let's do it. Powered by
whatever beer company wants to sponsor us.
Whatever beer you're drinking while watching this lovely.
Maybe it's something light. Maybe you like a nice little Miller Lite. Maybe you like something a little heavier, like a Yingling, or maybe you're a Kona fan. I don't know, or if you're a craft and IPA guy,
Maybe you're just sitting there drinking some White Claws. Maybe you're not even. Maybe it's not even a beer. Maybe it's just a 6-pack of White Claws. I'm just trying to be trendy.
The White Claw phenomenon is incredible.
It's bizarre. Well, no. What's weirder? No, and this is important. What's weirder is that White Claws have been around for a while.
Yeah.
But just now have they become the sensation on the internet. And I don't understand why that happened.
I'm not even lying to you when I say I saw more people drinking White Claws at the UCF tailgate than
anything else.
Yeah,
I saw pictures and I was like
everywhere.
It's crazy. And I love it. I like that it's a thing. It's much lighter. It's much it's comfortable. It's fun. It's flirty. But I don't understand it. I don't understand why it's just become a thing now. I love it. I'm happy about it. It was.
Let's get in. Let's start with the first game on our preview slate here.
Let's do it.
Cincinnati versus Ohio State.
This is a fun one. This is fun.
Yeah. So what to you sticks out about this matchup?
That it's going to be close.
Okay.
I think that Desmond Ridder has a chance here.
Yeah, he could really cement himself as hey. Y'all talk about UCF. You talk about Houston. You talk about Derek King. You've talked about Mackenzie Milton.
Right.
Desmond Ridder is here too.
Well, and that's I think the thing. So I'm not a gigantic Desmond Ridder fan.
I like him,
but I also think that I think that, and I'm gonna go ahead and correct myself or take back what I had to say during our American preview. I was like not high enough on Desmond Ridder. And I think it's mostly because I really was judging his one performance in the biggest game that they played, which was at UCF on college. But who was going to play well that day? Like, that atmosphere was crazy. I can't judge a quarterback based off one game. And I think I was grouping him in the Brady White category, and I should not have been doing that. He's far, far better than Brady White. I don't think that their win against UCLA was like so overwhelmingly impressive, to be honest with you.
So that's what I want to ask you a question about. Is their defense looked great against UCLA, but was that more UCLA's offense being terrible or Cincinnati's defense being good, or a mixture of both?
It's a mixture.
And if it's a mixture of both, do you think that this defense on the road with Luke Fickell at the helm, because this is an interesting Luke Fickell Ohio State dynamic, right?
Right. Well, that's the part that I was gonna say.
Yeah.
That I find most interesting is, like, if anyone can game plan for Ohio State in one of these Group of 5 conferences, it's Luke Fickell. Like, that guy knows what's going on at Ohio State. Now, obviously, it's Justin Fields. It's not the same guys that they've had, but actually, in a weird way, Justin Fields is, like, in terms of his mobility, not that different from the quarterbacks that were there when Luke Fickell was at Ohio State. Right, while Luke Fickell was there. Not necessarily the guys since then, but the guys while Luke Fickell was there, mobility was a huge part of the offense.
So it'll be interesting to me. This is arguably the most hostile atmosphere Ridder will play in, depending on how you feel about UCF on a game day, right?
Sure, sure, but it helped prepare. That much is for sure.
That he's got that under his belt now, right?
He's done it before.
This will be interesting. Michael Warren's health is huge.
Huge.
Because he got banged up a lot against.
Yeah. But if he's not healthy, it changes everything. If they control
the clock, which they're going to try and do with him, and if the defense can come and punch Ohio State in the mouth and say, "Hey, we're not FAU. You are not," like, and it's just not as easy for them right off the bat as it was against FAU. Then it becomes a question of, can Cincinnati really pull this off?
You'll know.
I don't think they will, but it's just, I could see the recipe. The ingredients are there.
You'll know in the first 10 minutes of the game.
Okay.
Whether or not it's possible, like whether or not Cincinnati stands a chance. I believe that Cincinnati does stand a chance. I could be totally wrong. I could be completely and utterly wrong. But that defense has real athletes, far different from what FAU has. And that's not to say that FAU doesn't have some athletes on the defensive side, that they don't have some.
Yeah, and their coaching is on a different. Luke Fickell is one of the better defensive coaches in the country, right?
Well, and that's exactly what I was going to. FAU's a more offensive-minded team, so if their offense wasn't going to click early, they weren't going to win that game. Eventually, when Ohio State basically gave up, they got back into it by score, sort of. But Cincinnati's defense first. And if they can punch Ohio State in the mouth and take a lead 7-0, 10-0, have a chance to bleed the clock a little bit throughout that game, this could be closer than some people think. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that, like, Cincinnati will win the game, but I don't know what the spread is, but, like, it's probably bigger than it should be. And I might, like, if I was a gambling man, Cincinnati is going to play this game close more likely than not, is all I'm saying there.
All right, so we're going to keep track of our picks here and keep up with our records throughout the year. So give me your pick for this game, official pick.
Just to differentiate, I'll go Cincinnati, just because I know you're taking
okay.
Ohio
I'm going to go with Ohio
State.
State.
I can pick something different, just so I could do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you get it right, you're sitting pretty on the standings already, right?
Yeah.
That's a veteran move. All right, let's move on here to Texas A&M and Clemson. Arguably one of the most – probably the – well, there's another one we're going to get to, right? But this is one of the biggest out-of-conference matchups of the year.
Yeah.
Last year, obviously, Texas A&M gave Clemson their best test of anybody. Even they played them closer than Alabama did, right?
Yeah.
So my question to you is, the difference is they're playing in Clemson this year. They're not in Texas.
Yeah, at Texas A&M.
And last year, Trevor Lawrence didn't play. Kelly Bryant was still the starter at the time. And Travis Etienne only had 8 carries in that game. This is a completely different Clemson offense.
Yeah, but
is it also going to be close.
So it'll be close, I think, because Texas A&M is very good. Like Texas A&M is very, very good. Clemson's much better. I mean, it's Clemson is so loaded offensively that it's one of those typical. It's going to be close for a half, and then eventually Clemson's going to wear out the Texas A&M defense, and Clemson will score enough points to win by 11 or 14. Like it's one of those games.
Right.
It's going to be an entertaining game to watch because you have so much NFL talent on both sides of the ball. But I don't even think that this is going to be like, if you're a guy or a girl that loves watching for the future, like if you love watching because people are going to be in the NFL, then sure, this will be a really entertaining game. But if you're just watching like to have the most entertaining college football game, I'm not sure this is going to be it. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think Clemson's way better than Texas A&M.
I think that Clemson is a lot better as well.
And
I think that Clemson's defense showed last week, and Georgia Tech is transitioning from a triple option, so
sure,
there's going to be growing pains, right? But their defense, to me, is still so loaded despite losing all of that talent that it lost.
Their defensive line.
And I don't have confidence outside of Kellen Mond, really, in any of Texas A&M's playmakers.
Right. Not to be better than Clemson's defensive players. That's the thing. It's like,
it just feels like Clemson is so overwhelmingly more talented, which is crazy to say, right? Because Texas A&M is a school in Texas,
and
in
one
the
of
SEC,
the most talented teams.
Bo Fisher is their head coach.
Right. They're one of the most talented teams in the country. They're a top 10 team in terms of talent. But I think Clemson should win this game, not with ease, but like not in too big of a struggle. What I will say that matters is that Texas A&M, if Texas A&M wins, that changes everything in terms of the playoff. And I know we're weeks and weeks and weeks away from that mattering, but like that could, for all intents and purposes, basically end Clemson's season, which sounds,
I don't know about that. I think a loss here, they would still be fine.
Sure, but it's their only really tough game.
Right.
Like, the ACC sucks so much that, no, really, I mean this legitimately. Like, yeah, they can rebound immediately because they'll go into Syracuse and beat a ranked Syracuse team. But then that's their last good win because the ACC is not good. And so if your only game, and we've said we think Texas A&M is going to get beat by a lot of these other tough SEC teams. So if
at least one or two,
right? Yeah. So if your loss is to like a 9-3 Texas A&M, and your only good win is at Syracuse, who's got a new quarterback that who knows what they're going to be this year.
Yeah, but I think that the weight of being Clemson, the defending national champion, like it would be different if this was.
But there's other programs we've talked about, like Oklahoma could go undefeated and then get in, and Ohio State could go undefeated and then get in, and two SEC teams get in ahead of you, and then that's the end of it. So like this game doesn't matter ostensibly in that both teams.
I'll say this: if Clemson loses a game, it makes it harder for a Pac-12 team to get in.
Way harder because one loss Clemson gets in. Yeah, no, it ends the Pac-12 playoff hopes. It might end the ACC. But like this game would, if Texas A&M were to win it, it would change the outlook of the rest of the.
It would even maybe quell the. It would maybe even be affect the SEC in a way where, hey, now that Clemson has one loss, they're still more intriguing to us as a conference champion, one-loss conference champion.
That's true. Than a second SEC team.
Than a second SEC team who doesn't even play in the conference championship.
And especially with what the SEC is right now. Now, if Alabama and Georgia were undefeated and played each other, it's a whole other conversation. But still, this is it's intriguing in that way. But I actually don't think it's like going to be the most entertaining game. So yeah, my pick is Clemson.
Yeah, I've got Clemson as well. Let's move on to Game 3 here. Nebraska versus Colorado. Nebraska was not good at all in their opening against Southern Alabama. Your boy Adrian Martinez, less than 200 total yards of offense. If not for a punt return and 5 turnovers on defense, they could have lost pretty easily in my mind.
I'm so disappointed in so many ways with how they performed. And let me also in Nebraska, I'm disappointed, number one. Let's just talk about on the field for a second. They looked underprepared. And the thing that I always felt while watching Scott Frost coach at UCF was that team was always prepared better than the other team. Even if they were out-muscled, even if they were, they lacked back in those days on the defensive line in a big way, in that they would get gashed on the ground constantly. I mean, it still happens, but they would get gashed on the ground. But offensively, they were crisp, they were prepared, and all this kind of showed me is maybe Adrian Martinez isn't Mackenzie Milton. Maybe we thought there was this hype. Maybe we thought because, or maybe I thought because, Scott Frost was taking that jump with year 2 with a guy in Mackenzie Milton that I saw not have a tremendous amount of skill initially. But maybe Adrian Martinez just isn't that dude in the same way. Now, I don't want to overreact from one game. But it made me sort of second guess what I felt about Martinez more than anything. Like, it was less about the rest of the team and more about I was shocked by how
that he couldn't just take over the game.
He should have been able to take over that game with relative ease, and I'm shocked that he didn't. And the other thing that I have to say that I'm disappointed in Scott Frost is how they handled the Maurice Washington situation. I just want to say it, like, it matters.
It's just not surprising anymore to me, these sorts of things.
Yeah, but I don't know. I had this specific outlook on Scott Frost with this halo above his head. And Maurice Washington is under, and I don't want to get this wrong, he's not under investigation. He's pled not guilty to child porn charges of basically having a video or picture of an underage person performing a sexual act and distributing that content. Apparently, he sent it to the girl with a threatening message.
Right.
He was supposed to be suspended. Well, Scott Frost did not say specifically one way or another the way that Maurice Washington's situation would be handled. He did not play the first half. And then at halftime, Scott Frost said in his interview, that'll teach him. In the first half interview, Scott Frost said, "We're not running the ball very well right now." And then he immediately brought in Maurice Washington. And
they continue to not run the ball very well.
As correct. And I will say, and normally I'm not surprised by these things, but I have such a halo over that whole coaching staff because of what they did down here in Orlando that I am a little surprised.
It just adds to your disappointment.
And I'm just really disappointed that was the decision that was made. And I get feeling the pressure. I get the alma mater thing. I get you can't lose to South Alabama. I get it. I'm not in Scott Frost's shoes. I'm also not totally aware of everything Maurice Washington has said to Scott Frost about what happened. I'm not sure what else has happened off the field, right? You got to at least suspend the kid for a game. And to say we're not running the ball quite well and then bring in the kid, it just feels icky.
Not a good look.
And I just don't like it. And I'd also, as I was watching, it made me realize I don't think I'm really rooting for Nebraska. Like, I thought I was rooting for Nebraska. I thought I was. I'm not. And I'm.
All right. And then real quick, and then we'll make our picks and move on. Yeah. Colorado beat the brakes off their rival, Colorado State, 52-31. The defense had a couple of lapses, which is understandable. They're learning a new defense with Mel Tucker there now. Mm-hmm. But on offense, Steven Montez was great at quarterback. They still have Laviska Shenault, who's one of the best receivers in the country. I'm done saying might be the best receiver because Jared Jeudy is without question the best receiver in the country in my mind.
Exactly.
But he's right in that next group of guys.
Well, he's number 2.
Justin Ross and
Laviska Shenault is. I'm going to go ahead and give Shenault the number 2 spot just because I think his quarterback play is not of the level of the other guys we're talking about that get the benefit of good quarterback play. He's an animal.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry.
And they found a running back. Like I said, they've had Philip Lindsay and Trevon McMullen, Alex Fontenot. I think that's French. 125 yards, three touchdowns in his game.
Yeah.
I'm picking Colorado.
I'm going to take Nebraska.
Okay.
I'm going to take them. I don't know why, but I'm taking them.
I just have more for some reason, and this is weird to say, I just have more confidence in Colorado at this point.
How weird is that?
All right. Let's move on now to the other big, like, out-of-conference matchup that we were kind of talking about, right?
Yeah.
LSU versus Texas. You could call this one the Hype Bowl in a way.
Oh, yeah.
I think the most interesting thing here, this is two of the toughest quarterbacks in the country going at it.
It's the best.
It's just Joe Burrow, right? And you got
Sam Ehlinger.
Sam Ehlinger, right?
Oh my God.
Just two tough nose. I think LSU's offense has been incredible this last, and Joe Burrow came out and like it just made it seem like that is going to continue now with his performance last week. I'm feeling really good if I'm LSU, honestly.
Same.
Now, am I feeling good in a way where I think that we can beat Alabama? Maybe I'm still, a touchdown, 10-point underdog in that situation. But speaking of underdogs, that's kind of where if I'm Texas, I'm feeling good, right? Because no coach in the country is better at being an underdog than Tom Herman.
Correct. And this is like, I don't know who I love Sam Ehlinger. I love that guy. Like
I like both of the teams in this matchup. I almost wish they didn't play each other.
I have a really hard time picking this game because I think Sam Ehlinger is legitimately incredible. I think the Joe Burrow has taken his play to another level that I never anticipated Joe Burrow playing at. After watching,
it's weird seeing LSU with a competent quarterback, right?
And after the way that he played to start last year, where he was just so mediocre, it was like I never anticipated that he would take this type of jump. I think the biggest difference is that LSU's defense is stupid. Like it's loaded with NFL talent.
And the Texas defense, in contrast, still has so many question marks after replacing all the guys that they replaced.
And it's not
like who'd they play last? I don't know who they played last week, but it wasn't enough to convince you. Like, oh, they'll be able to deal with LSU and all the playmakers that they have on offense.
And so that's my concern. Like, is great. It's gonna take a Heisman level Sam Ehlinger performance to be able, like a Heisman level in terms of he's got to do it in the air and on the ground, and take some big shots and come back from them, which he's capable of because he's built like a monster truck. I don't know, man. Like everything on paper says that LSU should win this game in my mind. Like everything that.
But your heart is telling you it's Texas, huh?
My heart is telling me it's Texas 100% because I love Sam Ehlinger and I would love to see the chaos.
The Sam Ehlinger Tom Herman dynamic too, because I don't know what it is about Tom Herman coach teams, but he gets them inspired to play bigger matchups.
He's a good coach, man. Well, and that's the part. So that's the space that I want to operate from when picking the game. He finds a way as a coach to exploit whatever the weakness is of the other team in big games. My problem is that I'm having a hard time identifying what LSU's weakness is. LSU is so strong everywhere. And so I want to give you...
This is the most complete LSU team in like a decade.
Yeah, and I want to give you, Texas will be able to run the ball. They'll be able to do some read options because Ehlinger can move. Like, no, LSU's run defense is remarkable. Oh, well, then he'll be able to, beat guys over the top. Well, no, they have Grant Delpit. And so
what's the corner's name? Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Christian Fulton.
Right. Like, no, that's not going to happen. And defensively,
Christian Fulton versus Colin Johnson is going to be a great matchup, by the way.
It's going to be
and Ehlinger versus Grant Delpit as well.
So this is a great football game. I'm gonna pick Texas.
Wow.
Only because I want to. Like
we've actually gone. We're actually because I'm going to go LSU. We've actually like picked differently on 3 of these 4 games so far.
I'm picking Texas against my better judgment. LSU should win this game. I'm picking Texas simply because I don't want to hear.
I don't want to hear any of your hedging, Jeremy.
Yeah, no, but I'm telling you right now. I said everything as to why LSU should win.
Right.
I'm picking Texas.
All right. Let's move on to a game where I don't think either of us thought that this would be a game that we're kind of interested in. But after the way North Carolina performed in week 1 and what I think Miami is still capable of, this has become kind of an interesting matchup with Miami traveling to UNC.
Yeah, man. It's fascinating.
Sam Howell already played against a pretty good defense against South Carolina. I think Miami is better than South Carolina on defense.
Yes. That's actually accurate.
Yeah, so seeing that matchup will be good. And on the Miami side, you get to see your offense now against a defense that's not as good as Florida's up front.
Right.
Could be this could go a long way in deciding who ends up playing in the ACC championship game at the end of the year.
So I'm just hopeful that it gets played. Right now, Hurricane Dorian's like headed straight for North Carolina, and so I'm hopeful that this game gets played. Also, I'm just hopeful that Hurricane Dorian just says psych and leaves, and everybody escapes okay, because what's happened in the Bahamas is one of the most horrifying things I've ever seen. All that said, back to football. Sam Howell like proved a lot to me. I think that because of that, the crowd in Chapel Hill could actually be kind of rocking.
Yeah.
You know,
especially
in a way,
if the Hurricane's not as bad as they thought, and they can
they
go
can all
out
stick
and enjoy their
around.
Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. Like there could be like there's a lot of reasons that crowd might be kind of hostile. And while Miami just played against Florida, they did that. It was a little bit of a Gator advantage, but like that was a neutral site. It was Orlando. Yeah. It was comfortable. They've been there before. Like it was not a super hostile environment. And it's not to say that North Carolina is known to be one, but it could be. And North Carolina is playing with nothing to lose. Like they already pulled off the upset against South Carolina.
Right. That's a really, really good point.
Right. They already did the upset thing. Their fan base is not going to be mad if they lose to Miami. Like they already did the thing. So now they're just playing with this confidence, this swagger, and Miami is playing with a ton of pressure because all of a sudden they're going into this hostile environment, needing the win, needing to get back on the right track, having a full extra week to think about it.
Sounds to me like you're thinking of leaning towards North Carolina here, Jeremy.
Well, but so all of that being said, so here's the other thing. I'm so sick of the Canes we're back fan, and I grew up a North Carolina fan. So everything, like, I want North Carolina to win. If you're a Miami fan watching this, sorry. I want North Carolina to win. I love North Carolina. That said, I also want to say about Miami. Miami looked damn good week one. Like, I know that we're saying like the Gators didn't look great and it was sloppy. And the further I go along in all of this, I talked about both teams being sloppy. They are. They were both not good. But Jaron Williams looked like a legitimate ACC quality quarterback. They have really good playmakers on the outside. They're running backs. And that's, I think, ultimately what should be the difference is the DJ Dallas and Cameron Harris. Like, DJ Dallas looked great week one. And I think that if Miami can control the ball the way that they want to, and Jaron Williams only has to throw the ball 20 to 25 times, that defense can do enough against Sam Howell to force him to make a mistake or two that allows Miami to win the football game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Miami as well here. I like what you said about the crowd being a factor. Last thing I want to add is there a more stark contrast of handsome coach versus not handsome coach than Manny Diaz versus
not that we've seen in quite a while. Did Cliff Kingsbury ever coach against Mac Brown? Because
no, he coached against what's his name though, Bill Snyder.
Yeah, see, that was a great contrast. But since those days, yeah, Manny Diaz got that handsome coach face, man.
Yeah. So we're both going Miami here. I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays against Miami's defense, and I think that Miami will be happy to be playing a defense not of Florida's caliber this week.
Of course. Yeah, no, that'll allow them to
should be a good matchup, though. And we're doing a great job staying on the 4-minute timer here this time. This is the second game in a row that we've ended on exactly 4 minutes.
We did it.
So final game of the Saturday six-pack. We're feeling a little buzzed right now, so it's time to get real weird with some Pac-12 after dark action.
Oh, yeah.
Stanford versus USC, Jeremy. Teams both dealing with some injuries at quarterback. KJ Costello is listed as questionable as we're recording this on what's today? Wednesday morning. So he's listed as questionable. JT Daniels is out for the season.
Right.
Graham Harrell's offense got up to a great start.
Yeah.
And then after the game script was done, it kind of stalled out a little bit.
Yeah.
Stanford's defense looked really good, but is their defense as good as it was back in the day with Harbaugh and then the early Shaw years, or was that a function of Northwestern's offense being terminally uninteresting? Like, just forever.
Dying of terminal uninterest.
Right. So this is an interesting matchup for a couple of reasons. Obviously, it'll have Pac-12 ramifications both ways with the North and the South. How do you feel about this matchup as it sits right now?
I knew where I sat if both quarterbacks were healthy. But with both quarterbacks being injured, there's just so much unknown. While I want to say that because I love Graham Harrell, which that will come up every single one of these episodes. While I love Graham Harrell and I think that he could take any quarterback and make them, a solid, have a solid performance, and USC is at home. Right? It's at USC. I think that's a huge advantage. That said, if both teams are going to be without their quarterback, and this is going to be sort of a defensive battle, and you might have a true freshman in a quarterback for USC with what Stanford's defense is.
Kadon Slovis is his name.
I see Stanford winning this game. Strictly because I don't think it's a good football game. Like, I think both teams are gonna, both teams without their quarterback after week 1. Like, how much does that suck? And if KJ Costello plays, I don't think it's particularly close. But if KJ Costello doesn't play, I still think that Stanford does their thing of run the ball, control the clock, play good defense, win 17-7, just like they did against Northwestern. And while I think Graham Harrell, because his system is so dynamic, could they maybe put up a few more points and maybe actually pull off an upset? Sure, it's possible. Especially
it would be huge. It would be monumental for Clay Helton if they could get this win. It flips the entire narrative on their season, right?
Gigantic. Absolutely changes everything.
So with both, like we said, both quarterbacks kind of injured here. If KJ Costello plays, you don't think it's going to be close.
Yeah.
I actually like USC's defense a lot. Just, it's USC, man. They have athletes. They've got guys who've been playing there. Kadon Slovis, true freshman, like you said, but we've seen what Graham Harrell has done with developing quarterbacks from his time when he was at Texas Tech to the time now where he was at North Texas with Mason Fine.
Stud. Still a stud.
And JT Daniels looked like a brand new quarterback in that first half, right?
It's such a shame.
So I think I'm actually leaning towards picking USC here.
Wow.
It would suck for UCF too, though.
It would suck so much.
I don't want to make this about UCF, but it would suck if Stanford lost this game.
UCF. Stanford's got to win.
It's a 10:30 Eastern time kickoff, which means it's 7:30 West Coast time. Which means it's going to get real late into the East Coast, and that's when games start to get really weird. They're at home. It's got all the recipe for a you wake up the next morning because maybe you fell asleep at halftime and you're like, Stanford was up 21-7 and you wake up and USC won 49-21 and you're like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah, no, I feel that. It's possible. And all right, so you're going USC then. So we picked different on what? No, we picked different on
4 of the 6.
I didn't actually go Carolina, even though I'm rooting for them.
Yeah, but that was still 4 of 6, right?
Right. No, it was still 4 of 6. I'm saying if I went Carolina, it would have been 5.
And also, last thing on this USC versus Stanford game, if you're Jack Sears, you got to feel pretty bad about your decision to enter the transfer portal now, huh?
You think he's just going to show up?
Well, he was listed as 4th on the depth chart, and apparently that's why he decided to transfer. I just want to know the story of how that ended up going so poorly.
You think he just shows up and starts?
No, he was listed as 4th on the depth chart. That was the whole reason he decided to transfer.
I understand, but now it's different. I'm sure that was a spiteful thing. 10% chance.
Maybe the coaches had an inclination that he would transfer if he wasn't the starter.
Yes, I think that's what happened. I think they knew he was going to transfer and said basically it was like, all right.
Well, then if it's at that point where the coaches are making such a petty move, I think that's too much damage done anyway.
10% chance he shows up and just plays against Stanford. Book it.
All right, let's get on to our quick segments here to end. We have 4 of them. Cool. So these are all just kind of fun. We'll start with the grown man of the week. That is the player that you watched that you came away saying, that was a grown man performance.
Yeah.
So, Jeremy, do you want to start with yours?
I mean, it's easy. We talked about it early. It's Jalen Hurts, man. Jalen Hurts, literally in every sense of the word, it was a grown man performance. Just in that I feel like he's been around college football for 500 years. And he went out there and it looked like an NFL quarterback just slicing apart a defense. And he was just a man. He took hits. He made perfect throws. He was a leader. Everything about that just said grown man performance for Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma.
All right, my grown man of the week performance goes to Anthony Gordon, the quarterback at Washington State. Sixth-year senior, finally gets his chance to start at the school that he's been at for all these years now. Comes away, his final stat line, 29 of 35, 420 yards and 5 touchdowns in his first ever start against New Mexico State. This is a kid that has waited his turn to finally get a chance to start. There was talk that he wouldn't even get to start this year because Goobert was in from Eastern Washington.
Right.
And he came out, showed out, and I'm just so happy for the guy that he got that opportunity. Even if he ends up maybe losing the starting job at some point this year, which there's no indication that he will, but if it does end up happening, at least he had this moment that he can always kind of think back on.
Yeah.
So,
and another literal grown man, sixth-year senior.
Yeah. So shout out to him. Let's get on now with the Enjoy It While It Lasts team. This won't be obviously a weekly sort of thing, but it's a team that won a game here in week 1 that you're not sure is going to be able to enjoy the spoils of winning again this season. So, Jeremy, who is your pick for this week?
I mean, it's the obvious UConn. UConn beat Wagner, right?
I believe so.
UConn will not win another football game this year.
And their defense actually looked pretty good.
UConn will not win another football game for at least 365 days.
Wow. Okay. Full calendar year, actually.
They will not win a game.
I've got Rutgers here. They beat UMass 48-21, which was a game that, if I remember correctly, in our little preview, I said, if they lose that game, it's over.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So they got their one.
Yeah.
They play Iowa this week.
They're going to get annihilated.
It's pretty much the end of the road. They have Liberty on their schedule, but Liberty played pretty well against
Shout out Hugh Freeze.
If Hugh Freeze is out of that hospital bed by the end of the season, it's there's no hope for him. So Rutgers, enjoy it while it lasts. UConn, enjoy it while it lasts. These might be the only 2 wins you guys have for the season.
Yep.
Honorable mention to Kansas. They barely beat Illinois State without, Larry Bird is not walking through that door for Illinois State. And they only came away with a 7-point win. Hassan Defense scored a touchdown, so I could tweet that picture yet again.
Always.
Let's go with our onion hanger.
Hold on. What if we do the most college football thing first, and then we end with our onion?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we could do that.
All right. So this next one is just the most college football thing I saw. We've talked about a few different things. It could have been simply just Oregon Auburn. It could have been a few different things. For me, it's Hugh Freeze coaching Liberty from a literal hospital bed.
That video of the post-game handshake between him and Dino Babers is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life.
It's the most important thing that's ever happened in this godforsaken sport. I mean, college football's been around 150 years.
If you just showed that to somebody who doesn't know college football, they would be like, "What the fuck are you showing?"
Well, no. So, all right. So here's the perfect example. Have you heard of the baseball Brit?
Yeah.
Okay. So the baseball Brit has decided that he wants to start learning about college football. Mm-hmm. All I want to do is just go here. Here's this video. That's all you need to know.
Yep.
Crazy. Incredible.
Real quick, did you see the video? You know how Iowa does that thing with the Children's Hospital in their stadium where they turn around?
Them waving to Hugh Freeze.
That was incredible. That was an incredible video.
It's amazing. I mean, there's been so many good Photoshops.
So I have 2 here. We already mentioned one of them was the cheerleader getting hit in the face by the ball in the Louisville Notre Dame game, and then her reaction being on Twitter was perfect.
Yeah.
But I'm actually going to go with the USC guys spelling fight on without the G. I don't know if you follow them on Twitter yet, Jeremy, but if you follow the college football Reddit Twitter page,
they
actually had a picture of the kid that was the G.
The G.
And he was just like,
It's amazing.
It's really fun. I'll send it to you, and you can put it in our little thing here. But
yeah, it's perfect.
yeah, so that was very, very the epitome of college football. What was funny is when the announcers were messing with them.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard that, but that was
yeah.
Cool.
It's great, man. College football is fantastic.
Let's wrap it up here then with the most important segment, right? Mm-hmm. Time to show who's a real man's man college football lover. We're going with the onion hanging upset pick of the week. Jeremy, why don't you kick us off?
All right, you guys ready for this? After all the great things I said,
hang some onions.
All the great things I said about the top of the SEC. I said that Auburn was better than Florida. I said that Bo Nix is a superstar. And I'm telling you right now that the Tulane Green Wave that upset, or not upset, but annihilated Florida International University last week on a Thursday.
Butch Davis who?
With a couple of extra days to prep for Auburn because they played on a Thursday. Tulane is going to go beat the Auburn Tigers.
You give Willie Fritz extra days to prepare, the Green Wave comes crashing down on you, brother. That's incredible. I like that one a lot.
They're going to run all over them. They're running all over that Auburn front seven.
I am a notorious Michigan hater.
Yep.
And I support our troops more than anyone I know.
Support our troops.
So you know what?
What?
Army, Jeff Monken, the whole squad, they're beating Michigan in the big house.
What?
I'm hanging onion. That's what's happening.
You heard it here first, folks. Army beats Michigan, and Tulane beats Auburn. Oh, dear God.
Those are things that you can definitely take to the bank, too. Take all of your life savings and put them towards those results.
If you don't put all of your money, your 401k, on Tulane running all over Auburn, then I don't know what you're doing.
Oh, by the way, did you know the over-under on the Ole Miss Memphis game was 65 points?